Petrol prices are going up hugely today at midnight, and we've been reporting on that quite extensively and what the effect has been over a period of time. Well, one sector that it's very much affected by that, of course, is our taxis. And because they carry so many people, millions across the country every single day, this is going to have a significant impact on people and commuter prices on the taxis. In fact, the taxi associations have been talking about price rises of somewhere between 25 to 30%. Well, to talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges that the Taxi Association is facing, we're now joined by the National Taxi Association spokesperson, Theo Malele. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
All right, I suppose it got to a point where you, as the operators, just couldn't keep the prices down given the rise in prices in fuel.
Yes, we certainly could not actually bear the pressures anymore, which is why we've opted into adjusting the taxi fares.
What percentage have you finalized on? What are we going to start to see from tomorrow?
Well, basically, the material conditions on the ground will determine precisely what the association on the ground would actually opt for. But from a national point of view, it was decided that between 25 and 30% should be the threshold for the taxi associations to adjust their fares on.
You will agree that this kind of hike is not something that commuters are able to bear. What might be the consequences? Might people not use taxis as much, or what's going to happen, do you think?
Well, I cannot actually get to that point. I wouldn't know what why people not use taxis, but I would assume that perhaps because of the prices that are too steepy. But there is nothing that the taxi industry could actually do, because as a business we also need to survive. As I speak to you, scores and scores of taxi operators have begun losing their taxis by virtue of not being able to meet their monthly financial obligations, which is one aspect, and the other was that the high maintenance cost on these vehicles has just been putting more pressure on the taxi operators to a point that they couldn't operate. Remember that this industry provides almost 400,000 direct and indirect jobs, and it is also for that reason that we've also written to government. We wrote specifically to the Minister of Minerals and Energy, Gwede Mantashe, and copied the Minister of Transport to ask them to please help the taxi industry from going under by ensuring that some of the taxes and levies are actually being removed from fuel, so that we're able to perform this task of moving the majority of the commuters in the country.
And what has government been saying?
Well, we are still awaiting government's response in that regard.
All right, give us a sense of how things have changed in the past year for taxi operators in terms of costs. You've talked about maintenance and things like that, but just the fuel aspect. Give us a sense of perhaps how many businesses have struggled and how many have failed as a result.
Just when we thought we had gone out of the hard lockdowns and we were trying to, resurface, then boom, came this geopolitical, situation that saw the fuel prices going up. And, prices had just gone up. You couldn't bear to keep up with the pace on the maintenance of the vehicles. and the repayment of these vehicles. You remember that most of these vehicles are still being owed, so therefore the taxi operators have a monthly obligation to actually service those debts. So it has been very, very steepy to a point that, as I said earlier on, a lot of taxi operators have begun losing their taxis through repossessions.
How much have profits gone down by? Let's talk in terms of percentages.
Well, the profits have been very, very, very squeezed. And well, the percentages will differ from one association to the other. As I said, that it is the material conditions on the ground that would actually tell as to what the input impacts are as per that particular association, because we cover different, distances. But, and also with the, long distance one and the rural ones with bad road surfaces, maintenance costs are very high. And you would also appreciate that there are also potholes even in the cities. The maintenance, of vehicles has just gone high.
Are the margins quite low on taxi operators? Often we don't understand as a business, if I get into a taxi and I pay 25 Rand, how much of that actually gets consumed in terms of running costs?
Well, we have a huge challenge. First and foremost, we have 40% that research has proven that does not reach us. It's money that actually ends with the drivers. It doesn't get to us.
Right.
And of the little that gets to us, we end up not being able to survive. Because if you look at the repayment value, it varies from between 15,000 and 18,000, which is not an easy amount to achieve at month end. So the margins are so squeezed to a point that as a taxi operator, you would be able to actually pay the driver their salaries or wages, but you would not even be able to be left with some disposable income for you to be able to service your vehicle should a need arise. So you basically need to take from Peter to pay Paul. So it's quite a laborious and steepy exercise for the taxi operator.
How do you think government can help directly? I mean, is it finding a way to continue with the subsidies, or could it be that they find a vehicle to help the taxi industry directly?
Well, our view is that the passengers needs to be subsidized, so that at the end of the day, it should be the passenger's decision as to which mode of transport they want to utilize along that particular corridor on that particular day. So once that can be put in place, then we should also be able to begin to charge market-related prices as opposed to the current charity fares that we are charging.
If the prices decrease, petrol price, etc., could some of the businesses that have disappeared be revived, or have some been lost for good now? Well,
it all depends. It all depends, because we're not the same. Some may not be able to recover, because remember, for you to recover, you need to actually amass a certain portion of a deposit for you to be able to purchase a vehicle. But you also need to have a good credit score for you to also have special rates. So if you cannot meet that criteria, then it becomes practically impossible for you to resurface. But we were just hopeful that not many would go under, because their livelihoods will be affected. As you rightfully would know, that as Africans, we have extended families. And like I said earlier on, we have 400 plus direct and indirect jobs that we actually are supporting as an industry.
Is there any precautions that you're taking in terms of safety? Because this is a very competitive environment, and we've seen in the past sometimes when competition gets stiff, it can lead to all sorts of problems, including violence. Is this something that you're worried and concerned about?
Well, safety is one of our critical parts that we always preach to the taxi industry and the general commuting public. We have a special program that deals with that, which is called Ndlelantle, a program that actually seeks to ensure that the vehicles, maintenance is kept to good standards, and the drivers also behave better, and and ensure that passengers are comfortable in those vehicles, and that they also try and drive carefully. But as you rightfully would know, that's not the case on our roads. And that is primarily because there is too much cash that is loose in the hands of drivers. This then, pushes them to drive recklessly to try and make a quick buck, and that actually compromises, the safety of our commuters on the road. Yeah, the question of maintenance, it's a non-negotiable one, but with the current squeezed margins, it becomes difficult for you to actually see on the roads with all vehicles. Not all vehicles, obviously, I must concede, of that well-kept standard.
All right, Mr. Malele, we're going to have to leave it there, and we certainly hope that things turn for the better, not just for the taxi industry, but ultimately for the commuters. Thank you so much indeed for your time.